It's been a few months since the finale to Doctor Who Series 12, The Timeless Children, aired, and, despite reacting to it immediately upon the episode's release, I haven't been fully able to articulate my issue with the Timeless Child story arc until today. So sit back, relax, and subscribe. This video is going to get some dislikes. Also, before you write an essay in the comments, I know the character's not called Doctor Who, but it just made for a snappier title. For the three people who haven't heard about the Timeless Child revelation, in Spyfall Part 2, it's revealed that the Master destroyed Gallifrey after hacking into the Matrix, and discovering that the entirety of Time Lord civilization was built on the lie of the Timeless Child, which was a throwaway line in Series 11.
We see deeper though, further back, the Timeless Child.
What did you just say?
The basic setup already contains some pretty large plot holes though. How did the Master destroy Gallifrey? How did he gain such easy access to the Matrix? You can try and justify it forever if you let yourself continue down the rabbit hole of bizarre plot contrivances this storyline presents. But I digress. Cut to a few episodes later, in Fugitive of the Judoon, we get introduced to yet another hidden incarnation of the Doctor, nicknamed the Ruth Doctor by fans due to her hiding out on Earth as a human called Ruth, in a similar fashion to how the 10th Doctor kept himself hidden as John Smith in Human Nature and the Family of Blood. The thing that separates Ruth from, say, the War Doctor for example though, is that the 13th Doctor doesn't recognise Ruth, and Ruth doesn't recognise the 13th Doctor, which got fans to wildly speculate about where she falls in the timeline, as well as questioning what relation she has to the Timeless Child, with some proposing that she was an incarnation in between the 2nd and 3rd Doctor due to us not seeing the 2nd Doctor's complete regeneration, in addition to the fact that in the comics of the time, there are a few stories in between the War Games and Spearhead from Space with the 2nd Doctor. Unfortunately though, the answer that we got was not only far more predictable, but also arguably stripped the Doctor of a lot of what makes them unique when compared to other fictional protagonists.
But I am the chosen one. Okay, sorry.
Enter the finale, The Timeless Children, the episode that attempts to answer the many questions plaguing fans' minds throughout the series. How does it decide to do this, you may ask? By making the Doctor a chosen one. Essentially, a child was found at the boundary to another universe by an early Gallifreyan explorer named Tech Dayun, who discovered that the child had the ability to regenerate upon death, and decided to experiment on the child in order to replicate this ability for her own species, which she eventually does, founding Time Lord Society as we know it. Surprise, surprise though, it turns out the Doctor was the Timeless Child all along, which not only means that the Doctor has lived far longer than she previously thought, but also means that she is essentially a god to the Time Lords upon which their entire civilization was based, which I know is a controversial take, but if you look up the definition for gods that don't pertain to Christianity, it reads, in certain other religions, a superhuman or spirit worshipped as having power over nature and human fortunes, a deity. Now I don't know about you, but I would say that a child who can regenerate endlessly to avoid death would be considered superhuman, or I guess super alien? I would also argue that someone who can control life and death to some extent would be considered to have power over nature or human/alien fortunes. The only thing I could see people disagreeing with me on is the worshipped aspect, as the Timeless Child is treated in such a way that is as far away from worship as possible. But I would argue that not all gods are necessarily worshipped, with an example being Hades from Greek mythology, who was reviled and feared by people rather than worshipped. Heck, even Jesus was hated and tortured right until the very end, and well, those people we assume to be Time Lords in the Brendan flashbacks definitely don't seem too happy to see the being that helped them so much. I believe that this not only removes a lot of the mystery surrounding the character by telling us their origin story, but to me it also flies in the face of what the Doctor is supposed to represent. The Doctor up until this point is considered by the Time Lords to be a degenerate underachiever who's too free-spirited to fit within their strict, totalitarianistic society.
I may be inexperienced, but I did graduate from the academy with a triple first. Well, it's better than scraping through with 51% at the second attempt.
Now, to be fair, you could make the argument that Doctor Who has been inflating the Doctor's importance to the wider universe for some time now. However, what separates this from, say, the Doctor being the last of the Time Lords in Series 1 is that in one case the Doctor is significant because of what they did, whereas in the other case the Doctor is significant because of how they were born. In addition, the 9th Doctor feels terrible about what he did, which not only sets up an interesting character arc that would add an extra layer of depth to his successors, with one being the man who regrets and the other being the man who forgets, but it also shows us that the Doctor would do absolutely anything to go back to the way it was, with him just being a traveller and nothing more. Contrast this to how the 13th Doctor reacts to the fact that she's the Timeless Child. She proudly asserts that she's more the Doctor now than she ever was before. and that she's not going to let this define her, which not only leads the audience to question what the point of it all was, but also prevents the Doctor from going on an arc of self-discovery that could have made Series 13 more distinct than its predecessors. In addition, the fact that she seems so smug about it when confronting the Master directly contradicts the constant theme that the Doctor is unaware of their own significance, and that they don't like it being pointed out to them. Such a contradiction could have been interesting if it wasn't presented by the show as being morally righteous. When this change was made, a common argument I saw from those who liked it was, it's so unique and different, and all I could think was, the show already did this, or at least, the expanded media of the show already did this. Of course, I'm referring to the Cartmel Master Plan. For those of you who are unaware, the Cartmel Master Plan was a plan devised by classic Who writer Andrew Cartmel to inject some more mystery back into Doctor Who, by revealing a secret about Gallifrey's origins. Sound familiar? By having the Doctor be the reincarnation of the Other, who was one of the 3 founding fathers of Gallifrey alongside Omega and Rassilon. In my opinion, despite them being slightly different in concept, this would have similarly removed a lot of the mystery that surrounds the Doctor, despite it being intended to do the opposite, as well as make the Doctor a godlike figure in the eyes of the Time Lords. While this was never officially implemented, it was a key plot point in the Virgin New Adventures, which Chris Chibnall would have more than likely grown up reading, so it's not impossible to suspect that he may have taken some inspiration from these books, which also explains why the 7th Doctor says things like, I'm far more than just another Time Lord, as they were teases to a plot line that never came to be, rather than the 7th Doctor somehow knowing about the Timeless Child. This point doesn't directly relate to the Doctor becoming a god, but I felt I should at least mention it, because I know it'll be a big talking point in the comments. So with the Doctor now originally being this immortal being, it canonised the idea of there being pre-Hartnell Doctors, or to put it simply, Doctors that appear in the timeline before the first Doctor. This, in my opinion, cheapens the character journey the first Doctor went on in the first 3 seasons of the show, with him slowly mellowing and learning to become a good person over time, thanks to the influence of his companions. But if incarnations like Ruth already went on that journey, what makes the first Doctor's journey any different from any of the other Doctors, who, presumably, went on the exact same journey as him? However, this issue isn't exclusive to the first Doctor, as now there are hundreds of Doctors. It makes each individual Doctor that we've seen feel a lot less important and special, as now there are hundreds of Doctors that we as an audience don't have a connection with, muddying the waters. Don't get me wrong, I do think some of the reactions to this have been a bit too hyperbolic, for what is, when you boil it down, a retcon in a TV show, but I can also understand why people really don't like it, because I'm in the same boat. I realise that so far this video has been pretty negative, so let's lighten the mood by talking about ways I think this could all be fixed, as I've seen a lot of potential retcon ideas thrown about, and I'd like to give some of my thoughts on them. I have both an idea for the Timeless Child staying canon, and an idea for a complete retcon. Idea 1. Make the Timeless Child the Master. This is probably the most common idea I've seen, and to be honest, I quite like it, as it would explain why the Master is constantly seeking immortality and why he treats bodies as disposable, as he used to have an unlimited supply of them. In addition, the insanity that has been plaguing the Master his whole life could have been the result of the experimentation he underwent as a child. It would also make the Master's destruction of Gallifrey and turn back to evil after Missy decided to stand with the Doctor seem a lot more justifiable, as the Time Lords actively exploited his abilities and then made him out to be some sort of degenerate lunatic, which keeps the idea of the Time Lords exploiting another being for their power, which is the only part of the arc I like. While this idea isn't perfect, as it does create an imbalance in the Doctor and the Master's dynamic like the current solution does, only the other way around, I still think it's the best outcome of a bad situation. Idea 2. Have the Timeless Child revelations be planted in the Matrix by Rassilon. At the end of Series 9, we saw that Rassilon was banished from Gallifrey by the Doctor. So what if all the things we've been seeing in the Matrix was a lie placed there by Rassilon as an act of revenge against the Doctor, and by extension the rest of Gallifrey? And the Time Lords we see in Series 12 could be followers of Rassilon who resent the fact the Doctor abandoned them without a leader. This would mean that Rassilon could be the big bad of Series 13, and force 13 to be held accountable for her mistakes. But where does the Ruth Doctor fit into all this? Well, she could be the 14th Doctor, who had her memory wiped at the end of Series 13's conflict with Rassilon, which explains why she doesn't recognise the 13th Doctor in Fugitive of the Judoon. Is it perfect? No. In fact, it's probably a little too reliant on previous storylines for a lot of people's liking. But then again, the Timeless Children made the Morbius Doctors canon, so who knows what's too lore heavy at this point. If you guys have any other ideas, feel free to leave them in the comments below, as I'd be interested to see what you guys come up with. Despite how much I've complained about it today, I can still absolutely see why someone would enjoy the Timeless Child story arc, as now basically every Doctor can be counted as canon, which must be a cool prospect for fan film and fan audio makers. I just want to make it abundantly clear that you're not wrong or horrible or stupid for enjoying something that I or anyone else don't enjoy. Like whatever you want to like. This is entertainment at the end of the day. It's meant to be fun to discuss and dissect. There's no need to go after people you disagree with, because it just derails the conversation from what we're all so passionate about in the first place. Doctor Who. Thank you for watching, and I will see you later.